What are the best rivalries in UFC history? Well, today, guys, we're going to be working out on this tier list. I've got fighters' rivalries all around the screen. I'm going to drag and drop them into where they belong in this tier list. S tier being the most heated, the most insane and entertaining rivalries we've ever had in the sport, all the way down to F tier, which have just been lackluster, not very entertaining, pretty boring. So, obviously, I'm MMA Tizzer. Subscribe if you're new, leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and without further ado, let's get right into this. Starting off with none other than Kobe Covington versus Kamaru Usman. I'm going for B tier here. I'm going for B tier. Actually, we're going for low A. Okay, so this was obviously two fights. And Usman won both of them. But the thing that really sets this fight apart is that the trash talking was just on a whole other level between these two. They were both really game for it. They were going proper back and forth. And obviously, Kobe Chaos Covington, he's got some of the funniest trash talk in the game. Extremely entertaining, whether you love him or hate him. So a lot of people were watching this fight to see Kobe get beaten. And a lot of people were watching this fight because they didn't like Usman and to see him get beaten instead. So it was pretty high selling, did pretty well. And both fights were insane. You can't deny that. They were literally non-stop action. It was just complete stand-up fight, barely any wrestling, non-stop hands, and it was really entertaining. Pretty crazy scrap, and obviously Kobe Covington did lose both of them. He lost the first one by finish, lost the second one by decision, and you got to admit that Kobe's a tough guy. You know, he broke his jaw in that first fight and he just continued. So it just showed the grit of him. But fair play, good rivalry. I really respect it. We move on. Alex Pereira versus Israel Adesanya. This one's going at the top of A, I think. Okay. And the reason being is that even though, you know, Adesanya didn't really trash talk Pereira that much, and they didn't really go back and forth due to the language barrier and stuff like that. So it made it a little bit more difficult than against like Kobe and Usman, where they both obviously speak English, so they both just trash each other. The rivalry itself was a bit deeper, meaning, you know, because obviously Pereira's got that background in kickboxing where he's beaten Izzy, and Izzy's never beaten him. And he's the only man to knock out Adesanya. Then obviously comes in, first UFC title fight, finishes Adesanya, who's never lost at middleweight. So, you know, there was that insanely dynamic aspect of it that it never happened before in any UFC fights. You know, no one had ever followed someone through and then beaten them, took their belt off them. But then obviously, you know, Adesanya came back and ruined the fun and actually won the second time, which was a bit disappointing. But it is what it is. Both fights were good, you know, very extremely high level. You know, it was some of the best stand-up we're going to get in the UFC. Two of the most high level fighters in regards to striking. And yeah, that's really all I have to say. Obviously, finishes in both fights, so that's pretty good. You know, they were both, like I just said, really high displays of skill. And the only thing that could have added to it, I guess, that could have made it S tier, is if they both, you know, Alex Pereira spoke English and they could have gone back and forth and trashed each other. Because obviously they didn't really have that, so it was kind of a bit of there was not really much trash talk because these guys don't have a shared language. So yeah, we move on. Aljamain Sterling versus Peter Yan. This one's going in D, okay? This one, it was an alright rivalry, you know, but there was better rivalries, that's for sure. Obviously, it all started really after Aljamain beat Corey Sandhagen and called him out and really messed up what he was saying, and it just came out really weirdly. But anyway, he got the fight with Peter Yan. He was trash talking him in the build up. Started pretty well, then kind of gassed or something. He looked kind of off, was getting beaten. He was on his way to probably get finished or lose a decision. And then Peter Yan kneed him in the face. So that was a huge mistake from Peter Yan. And then obviously that sparked a load of beef because Aljo was celebrating like a day after because he's the new champion by the rule set. And then Peter Yan obviously wasn't happy with that. So then they had the rematch. Aljamain won it by a really, really narrow decision. And to be fair, I think he did win it, so I'll give him credit for that. So then Peter Yan basically got kicked out of the title picture and ended up going on a massive losing streak. But the point is, this fight, it wasn't really, you know, the tensions weren't really there. You could tell they didn't like each other, but I just feel like obviously there was not much trash talk because of the language barrier issue, which is clearly a common issue in the UFC trash talk department. And I don't know, it didn't really feel like there was a lot on the line. I don't know. I feel like it was kind of hard to get behind either fighter. Like most people were rooting for Yan, but still, like Yan in himself, he's likable, but he's not like the most like you don't really find yourself rooting for either of them like you do in maybe the Pereira Adesanya fight or the Kobe Usman fight. So that's why they're there. not as interesting and not as entertaining, but still alright fights. We move on. Aldo versus McGregor. Now, Aldo McGregor's going to be, okay? And the reason being is because, the build up to this fight was pretty good, okay? We'll give it that. The build up was really good. Obviously, it had that big tour where they went around the world, and obviously, Conor McGregor in that time really got under Aldo's skin. You could tell he really hated him. These two didn't. I don't think Conor McGregor really disliked Aldo, but I know that Aldo really didn't like McGregor. Really winding him up. He did a really good job at it. And then obviously the fight happened and he knocked him out in 13 seconds. So, that was really impressive. And obviously that had never been done in a title fight. Nothing like that had happened before. And it really just made McGregor shoot up to the next level because now he was featherweight champ and he beat the guy that no one could beat for 10 years. But honestly, obviously they didn't speak the same language, but to be fair to McGregor, he did try and improve that by trying to get some Brazilian translations and hurl abuse at Aldo and stuff. So it was pretty funny, but it kind of fell flat because Aldo wasn't really one for like all the smack talk and stuff like that. Obviously, was it a good rivalry? Yes, but it was over pretty quickly. After the tour, nothing. They were all respectful because McGregor was happy and Aldo was like, "Well, I can't really be mad now. I've just been humbled." So, and obviously they never rematched, and now they're friends. So that's why it's in B tier. Pretty entertaining and kind of fizzled out after the knockout, but crazy finish to be fair. We move on to the first S tier rivalry on this list, Daniel Cormier versus John Jones. I mean, what else do I have to say about this? This is an S tier rivalry in every way. These two guys really didn't like each other, and I mean it. Like, you were hearing some of the most crazy statements from both of these guys. They literally despised each other. It was not for cameras. It was not for to sell pay-per-views. They genuinely, I think they would have both done this fight for free if they just knew that they were going to fight each other, because that was absolutely crazy. Some of the stuff they said, fighting at the weigh-ins and stuff, like shoving people out of the way and other people were getting hurt. It was absolutely crazy. And the fights delivered. They were good fights. Obviously, John Jones won both of them, which is a shame for Cormier because he's definitely the better person out of the two of them. But John Jones was in his prime then, and Daniel Cormier was just coming out of it. He was getting a bit old. So yeah, fair play. Jones really does have DC's number. He's quite a nightmare matchup for him, in my opinion. But amazing rivalry. So heated, so entertaining, and the fights delivered. So there's not really much else I can say except S tier all over. There's not a thing that could have been better in this rivalry. It was absolutely crazy, and it was literally, I imagine it got a lot of people interested in the UFC because it really went, all over social media and stuff. It really blew up the UFC and helped it in, the mid 2015s and stuff when it was kind of rising to a mainstream popularity. We move on. Another S tier one, and a lot of people aren't going to agree with me on this one, but I really do think it's S tier. Conor Khabib, okay? No, I think this was a very defining moment for the UFC, and it got a lot of fans involved because it was one of those ones where it was like you pick a side and you stick to it. You're either a McGregor fan or you're a Khabib fan. Like, no one was in the middle, you know what I mean? You always had a side. It was very polarizing, and the press conference was insane. These two proper got at it. Even Khabib was saying bad things, which is pretty rare for him. Obviously McGregor was saying most of it, and then the bus incident where he threw that that thing used for moving objects. He threw that through the bus. He didn't even hit Khabib. He hit Michael Chiesa, I'm pretty sure, and cut his face open. So I don't know why he did that. Went to jail, or he got arrested for it. Even he didn't go to jail. So that was really big. That blew up all over mainstream news and stuff. So then people hated McGregor. Didn't even hit his target. I imagine a lot of UFC fighters on the bus hated McGregor after that. And crazy rivalry. The fight was good. Really enjoyable fight. Obviously Khabib got the round 4 submission, but Conor had a good third round, to be fair to him, after getting battered the first two. He had a good third round. I think it was one of the first rounds Khabib lost in the UFC. Might have been the first, actually. And yeah, just amazing. I really wanted a second fight to happen, but obviously it won't happen now. But there was a small window where it could have happened, maybe like a year later. But obviously, results just didn't go McGregor's way, so it kind of ruled out the possibility of that happening. And honestly, I'd really like if these guys became friends again, because will it ever happen? Probably not, but there's a 1% chance it could, and that would actually be the most wholesome thing, just to rekindle a friendship out of this massive rivalry. But it was crazy. This thing went all over social media, and then the brawl after with Khabib attacking Dylan Danis, and then the fight in the ring, fight in the octagon, sorry, that was crazy. So, this thing's got S tier all over it, just like the Jones Cormier fight. We move on. Anderson Silva versus Chael Sonnen, C tier. I mean, obviously, big rivalry, but the first fight, it was kind of boring. Like, Chael just laid on top of Silva and ground and pounded him and then got subbed. So, like, that is Chael Sonnen a good trash talker? Yes. Anderson Silva doesn't really trash talk as much, a bit more respectful. Second fight was much better. So Chael carried the trash talk, but the problem is in the second fight, you can't really trash talk that much when you've just been subbed. You know what I mean? He got beaten 2 years before by Anderson, so you can't say, oh, you suck because you got beaten by him. So he had some good one-liners. There's a lot of iconic moments from the build-up to the fights. But obviously for Chael, he kind of fell flat because he lost both of them, and the second time he got finished by KO in the second round. So it doesn't look as good for him. And that's why it's there. Obviously, Anderson Silva, he's not that much of a trash talker, and the build-up just wasn't as crazy because the guy talking a lot of trash kind of got beaten both times. So, it doesn't really help. C tier. Not bad though, entertaining. We move on. Michael Bisping versus Luke Rockhold. I think this one's going in B tier. Very, very fun, entertaining. This was prime Michael Bisping. This was when he was really funny and witty. Just entertaining. Very obviously he lost the first fight to Rockhold. So the second fight, I think he was quite a big underdog as well. But I mean, fair enough. He chinned Rockhold in the second fight. So fair play to him. Got his belt. I think he is one of the worst fighters ever to win the belt, but it is what it is. He had a good performance that night. So fair play to him. And the trash talk leading up to the second fight was insane. So funny from both ends. There's a lot of iconic moments on YouTube of that. And after they had like a post-fight press conference, they don't do this anymore, but they got them both in at the same time. So like Luke Rockhold, who had just been knocked out, was really bitter and salty, and Bisping was obviously really ecstatic. And then they just traded more words after, which was really funny. But Bisping definitely got the better of it because Luke really didn't have any ground to stand on. But very funny. Obviously, the trash talk was good, and obviously there was a knockout in the fight, so it's pretty good as well. B tier. We move on. Conor versus Nate. Now, I'm debating whether to put... I think I might put this one at the bottom of S tier, to be honest. This one goes at the bottom of S tier because the trash talk was insane, and both fights were good. The second fight was really good. Obviously, Conor McGregor got humbled in the first fight. Well, humbled. He didn't really humble his personality at all, but he did get beaten. Short notice step in. No one would expect Nate to win, but Nate's got that cardio and he's got that grappling. So Conor kind of gassed him and he started getting lit up, shot in with a sloppy takedown and got punished for it and got subbed by Nate Diaz after ground and pound. So, Nate Diaz shocked the world, and that was a big moment for the UFC. Especially in America, their market boomed because they were getting like mainstream interviews on like Conan show. They were on all the late night talk shows on the Money Channel. So it really blew up when the rematch was happening. So obviously hugely funny fight, fight, very popular. Both delivered. The trash talk was immense. Obviously, Nate Diaz is we know he doesn't like Conor. Conor didn't like him. It was really funny. The Money Channel interview is iconic. One of the funniest UFC like fighter interview kind of things that we've ever had. And just a great rivalry in general, and definitely one for the ages. These top three, you'll remember them. You know what I mean? These are rivalries you will remember if you're a UFC fan. You'll think, wow, like those were the days. But and that's why it's S tier, because it's just a memorable, iconic piece of UFC history. We move on. Figueiredo, Moreno. I don't really like. I'm not a big fan of this rivalry, right? Because honestly, guys, I don't really care. Okay, I don't really care who won at all because they're both cringe. Okay, you've got Moreno, who's really cringing himself, crying all the time, but then you've got Figueiredo, who's really cringe as well. So, like, no one really cared about this. This was kind of like when Moreno won in the second fight and got the belt, people like were happy for Moreno, which I get. I was pretty happy for him. He had his moment. But then the third fight, bit of a weird decision. No one really can agree on who won that fight, but I guess that Figueiredo did win it because he dropped Moreno when it mattered. And then the fourth fight, just like, obviously doctor stoppage, but no one cares. Like, it's genuinely it's already forgotten, and it was recent. Obviously, the trilogy's ended now because Figueiredo's moving up, supposedly. So, but, decent fights, to be fair. They both went for it in all four fights. First quadrilogy in UFC history. but it didn't capture anyone's emotions, and it just kind of was a bit flat. I don't really know how else to describe it, but there wasn't you weren't nervous watching the fight. You were like, oh my god, I hope my guy wins. You're just not feeling that kind of emotion in these fights, so that's why it's there. We move on. GSP Bisping. We're going C. I don't know. We're going C tier, like top C tier, because this was fun, but it was only one fight. And yeah, so obviously they went back and forth. Bisping had really good moments again. This was prime Bisping, trash talk, very witty. He's got the England wit, and just funny guy. Really flamed George sometimes. George kind of fired back. He was funny. His trash talk's a little bit cringe though, but it made it funny because it wasn't too cringe. It wasn't like Sterling cringe or Cejudo cringe, but he's too nice basically for trash talk. And the fight was really good. The fight delivered. I'm kind of debating putting it on B tier actually. I think we'll put it on B tier, because it was really entertaining. Obviously GSP won, so he became middleweight champ. So he was a double champ, or he held belts in two divisions. He wasn't actually the double champ. He wasn't the welterweight champ either. But really good fight. Really entertaining. They're friends now. Obviously they get on now. And I could kind of tell because they had like a lot of mutual respect for each other. But the trash talk was fun. The weigh-ins were fun. Everything was just good about this, and it was a really good main event. One of the best cards of all time, really. I think, in my opinion, if you look back at the card, it was stacked from top to bottom. And yeah, that's all I have to say about them. And that's the tier list, guys. Obviously, I've missed a few rivalries. I can't remember every single one, and due to time constraints, I couldn't put every single rivalry in the UFC here. But as far as I'm aware, I've got basically most of the best ones. And yeah, that's the video, guys. So subscribe if you're new. Thank you for watching. Really appreciate it. Like the video if you enjoyed it. And leave a comment down below reminding me which other rivalries need to be added to this tier list. And I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm streaming tonight. See ya.